too much to bear, and it seems there's no one who cares. Jesus. All right, Gospel Diaries, we're back at it, and oh my God, we're in a fabulous location right here. But anywho, I am with the one and only, the composer of I'm His Child, Mr. Malcolm Speed. How you doing?
I'm good, Eric. How are you
I'm doing
guys?
great. Tell the people how.
All of the people in Gospel Diaries, hello.
That's what's up. You know, this is long overdue. We all have found inspiration in your song "I'm His Child," like the world has found so much inspiration in that. And a lot of us don't really know the writer per se. And I think that this is a great opportunity to delve into your life and kind of find out some things what led into you writing, composing that song. So let's start. Where were you born?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. You've been here all your life.
Been here all my life.
Have you ever moved?
Only during the stint that I was drafted by the military, the Army, and I was at Fort Lost in the Woods, as we used to call it, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which is maybe about 3 hours just south of St. Louis.
Wow. So tell me how life was as a child here in St. Louis, Malcolm. Little Malcolm.
Grew up in a very religious home. My mom and my dad, prior to my birth, had separated, and so I was born without my father. I actually lived without my father for 47 years. And out of nowhere, a close friend of the family, one Christmas gathering, made mention of my dad to my mom. And by that time, they had no contest divorce. And my mother said, husband? I ain't got no husband. And he made made us aware that my dad lived in New York. He had been out of the service, and he worked as a counselor, volunteer counselor for the Veterans Administration in New York. And this person who, like I said, was a close friend of the family. As a matter of fact, his sister was Caretha Bell, who was the minister of music for Cleophas Robinson's church. And but they had all grown up together at Kennelly Temple. Part of my background was Church of God in Christ, and eventually I joined my mother's church, which was a Baptist church. But my brother got in touch with my dad, flew him in, and I met my dad for the first time.
Wow. How did that feel?
It was an empty feeling, because whatever love that was there to share with a father was no longer there after 46 years. So, and I felt sort of uneasy. As a matter of fact, I greeted him, I spent a little time, and then I left, and I didn't go back to my mother's house for almost a month. I was getting ready to go out to San Jose and do a workshop, and before I left to go to the airport, my mother and my dad came over, and he said, son, I'm really happy to be back in your life, and so really proud of what I hear you've accomplished, and have a safe trip. While I was on that trip, my mother and my dad sent me a message. This was 1997. Sent me a message and said, son, when you get this voicemail, because it was old time phone, the house phone. When you get this voice message, your mother and I have reconciled, and we're going to be on our way to Las Vegas to remarry. So after almost 47 years of not having my dad in my life, I got to have him in my life for 11 and a half years. Yeah, yeah. But I grew up in a household with a very strong woman, because she had 2 boys, so she couldn't.
What's your brother's name?
My brother's name was Bishop Reginald Cortez Speed. He died about 3.5 years ago. He's 3.5 years older than I was. And he actually got to meet my dad before they separated. So, you know, he knew my dad, but it was just because God brought that love back, and it was an awesome thing to have him. But in lieu of my dad, My mother's oldest sister, Lucille Boykin, helped to raise both of us. She stayed with us for all of her life, literally all of her life. And I asked my mother to take music lessons, piano lessons, when I was 8. And my mother had already sent my brother, hoping that he would want to do it, but he really didn't. So she quickly said, no, because you probably would be just like your brother. In the breath that it took her to say no and be quiet, my aunt said, I'll send him. So literally my aunt was the ram in the bush.
Wow.
And even though there were times I got discouraged and wanted to quit, and I could hear my mother say, see, I told you, my aunt would still encourage me. She never gave up. So, and it was a while before my mother really got on my bandwagon in terms of support and really believing that God had gifted me. She had to see, and more so she had to hear it from people. You know, she couldn't just see it. She had to actually hear it. Because there were a number of times, as a matter of fact, my mother, the day that I wrote, I'm His Child, my mother told me, you ought to give up playing for church. They ain't paying you no way. You need to quit all all that other stuff you're doing and get your head in your books. And what happened is I had come home, and at that time they mailed grades home. And my mother had no problems opening my mail when it came from my college. And I had gotten an F in algebra. Now, what you need to understand is, and I didn't even try to explain it to my mother because I knew my mother, it would have been wasted words, but I had 3 different teachers in one semester, and none of them followed what the other was doing. And if I'd known then what I knew later, I would have gone to the dean with my other classmates and I would have told them, no, we're not accepting any grade incomplete, and you all pay for us to take it over again because we didn't get any education in that class.
Right.
But I got an F. And while walking to my room crying, I just said, okay, I'm going to quit playing for church. I'm going to quit going to church. I'm going to quit working. I'm going to be a house bum.
House bum.
And I laid down on my bed, crying, and it wasn't long before literally God sang I'm His Child into my spirit. And He wouldn't stop singing it until I lifted up off that bed and dried my tears. And changed my mindset because I was serious about all of the things that I said I was going to stop. I wasn't playing. I mean, I was just that hurt. But God knew what His plan and purpose for my life was. And He wasn't going to let that little insignificant thing keep me from doing what He wanted me to do. That summer I took algebra over. And it was a new instructor in the math department. She later became the head of the math department. I got an A. So it wasn't that I couldn't comprehend. It's just that we were not taught. We weren't given the right education that we should have been given after 3 different instructors in one. So, but that's how I'm His Child came about. And actually, I had blinders on when it came to the song and the message of the song. It was personal to me. I couldn't imagine anybody else would understand it or identify with it. So I really didn't teach it to anybody but my kids. I was over the youth department at my church, and I taught it to the junior choir, the preteens, because it had I'm His Child in it.
I'm His Child.
So I taught it to the kids. And we happened to be out singing. The older group would go out for engagements. And one afternoon, we went to a church for a youth engagement, young adult engagement. And our supervisor, before we went up to sing, whispered in my ear. And she said, Malcolm, you know, you got a lot of the junior choir members. Why don't you let them sing one of their songs? And I said, okay. So we went up, I brought them up, and I had them, I think they sang second. I had the older group to sing, and I told the older group, I said, listen, when we get to the chorus, y'all harmonize on the chorus. And I knew that they could do that naturally without even, And we got to the second chorus of I'm His Child, and I heard this noise behind me because the piano was facing the choir, and, you couldn't see behind you. So I heard this noise, and I turned around. Folk were clearing benches, shouting, screaming. And we did one more chorus, and by that time, half of the junior choir members were crying and shouting. And I'm like, what is going on? So when I walked out of the church, God said, it's not just your testimony.
Oh, yeah.
But that's how close it was to me. I didn't think that anybody else would understand it. And Dr. Maddie Mose Clark called me in 1980, the beginning of 1980, and I had already recorded a song with UNAC in Los Angeles, Reflections. And she knew I was writing, and she said, I've been led to call you and ask you for a song. We're getting ready to do a national recording with Betty Nelson, and I want to do you one of your songs. So get a song to me. I flew to Detroit. I went to 18203 Sorrento at Curtis and knocked on the door. Twinkie opened the door and she told me to come in. They were expecting me, and she called upstairs. Dr. Clark was upstairs on the second floor. She said, Mama, Malcolm's here. Maddie called everybody boy and girl. No. She said, girl, come up and get this tape recorder and take that boy down in the basement and let him record his song. So Twinkie went upstairs and got the cassette recorder. We went downstairs to that famous piano where I'm sure she wrote the majority of her songs. And she said, okay, Malcolm, go ahead and play it, sing it. And I sang the verse and the chorus. And I don't think the second verse had been written then. But at any rate, I sang it, and I told her I was done. She said, okay. And we went back upstairs, and Twinkie called upstairs. She said, Mama, we done. Maddie never came downstairs. She said, okay, boy, we're going to get with Betty and see what we can do, and we'll keep you in touch and let you know how things go. Well, they did record it. They slowed it down, because I'm His Child has always had a moderate tempo. But they slowed it down to a much slower beat. And I don't know whether it was Maddie or Twinkie or Betty or all of them together, but they changed the first phrase of the chorus. The original words are, His name is Jesus, begotten Son of God. And they changed it, His name is Jesus, the righteous Son of God. And I had friends, who sang with my group. I had a community choir for 21 years, the Inspirational Youth Fellowship Choir. And many of them were my choir members at the church and others around the city. But they said, why you let them change your words? And I said, number one, I didn't know they were going to change my words. Yeah. I said, number two, I don't care. Because he is the righteous Son of God too. Yeah. So,
but we can't downplay as a writer. It's great to hear others' interpretation of your vision, but the original lyrics and the way that you envisioned it's like it's staying in your mind. When you hear someone sing it differently, but it's still just a natural
when they sing it, I'm singing the original words in my mind. Yeah. And whenever I teach it now, I actually teach both.
Okay.
I sing the original chorus, and then I come back and sing the second chorus with the other set of words.
Wow. Well, look, we've had fun. This is our first segment. We're going to come back, and we definitely got to talk about the St. Louis gospel scene with this amazing maestro here, Mr. Malcolm Speed.
And I'm gonna add a footnote. We're at the house of one of St. Louis's finest and most renowned gospel legends of all times. He started out as a youngster, maybe even preteen, at the Progressive Baptist Church, founded by the late Reverend Joseph D. Linton.
All right, you guys, we'll be back.
Sometimes my problem,
When problems.
when problems.
Sometimes when problems.
Yeah, bring it down a little lower.
That's,
I mean the key. What key you in?
the key is written.
Yeah, you know I done got a little older since then.
Really? You got a little older?
Yeah, since they did that movie maybe about 40 years ago. That been 40 years ago, yeah.
Started in 1981, so the song was written in 1978.
It's older than my daughter.
It's 44 years ago. Just sing what you know.
Those words again.
Now, you don't sing it, that's no good.
No. Huh? No, I can do it the way you want it. Okay. I may not be the best at anything. Oh yeah, the best at